Well, happy Monday to all of you that are on. Do me a favor. Go ahead and share this, share this, share this. If you're on, let me know that you're on. Type something in the chat. Let me know you are on. Let me know where you may be watching from. It's another Monday, which means it's another day for barrier breaking Mondays. Every Monday, at least for the foreseeable future, it is my commitment and it is my desire to come to you with just kind of some content and some information and really some an opportunity. Thank you, Cameron. It's good to see you on. Whoever else may be watching, let us know that you're on. But every Monday right now, it's our commitment. Hey, Ashley, it's our commitment to come on to at the beginning of the week to give you hopefully some tools, some encouragement, some inspiration, some empowerment, some a jolt. If we're going to be honest, Mondays are tough for a lot of us. Like Mondays are the beginning of the week, but for some people, they're the day in which we dread the most because they're the beginning of kind of, at times at least, some work we may not want to do, some challenges we may not be ready for, some things we may be going into the week about that we may feel ill-equipped to manage or to maintain. And so what I want to do is at the beginning of the week, hopefully give you some ways to transform how you approach it, to rethink the assignments and the responsibilities that you may have, and to hopefully leave you inspired, encouraged, and empowered to walk into your purpose, to better manage your responsibilities, to feel as if you at least have some information that may lead you forward toward what you are capable of doing. And so each and every week has been special. I'm going to give you all just another minute or two, another moment or two rather, to go ahead and share this. I want to make sure you're sharing this. Why do I ask you to share it? Because whether someone watches this live or watches this on a replay, I believe the information that's shared has the opportunity to impact them significantly. And so I never want you to discount what could happen as a result of your decision to share this. Likewise, I want to say thank you to all of you all who are watching this on the replay. I feel like we have a live crew and then we have a replay crew. So if you're watching this back, you're not left out, you're not neglected, you're not anything. I want for you making that decision to tune in and to watch this even on a replay. So I want to say thank you to you for doing that. Well, with no further delay, I'll come back at the end perhaps and give you just kind of some updates and some reminders. Again, at the bottom of this is the website in which you can stay up to date and in touch with us, specifically for things like Barrier Breaking Mondays, some leadership talks and conversations. Some of you all know me through my work as a pastor. I lead Empowerment Church. But in addition to Empowerment Church, there's some other not-for-profit work that I do. There's some coaching and some consulting and some leadership initiatives that I lead. And so what Barrier Breaking Mondays does or should do is open you up to some other expressions of my influence, as well as provide you with an opportunity to hear from some incredible guests. And that's what we have tonight. Is we have what I believe is a woman who is going to introduce some of you all to not only a new expression of her than some of you who are part of our empowerment family may be aware of, but I believe it's going to open you up to potentially some new opportunities that you may not have even heard of. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring Jennifer on with us, and then I'm going to read her bio. And I actually am going to read her bio to you because I think that there are some things in it that are significant to share, and I don't want to entrust to my memory to remember. So let's go ahead. Let's bring Jennifer Cassell Wright up, and then I'm going to read her bio to you, and we're going to go from there. But I'm super duper excited to have you on with me tonight, Jennifer. Thank you so very much. It means the world to me that you would say hello to me.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. So, Jennifer, I'm going to read your bio, and again, I'm going to jump right in from there because I'm personally intrigued to know more about what you do, but more than what you do, or in addition to what you do, rather, should I say? I'm interested in learning more about you and your journey. Each and every week so far, we've had an incredible time of getting to hear people's story. This is week 5, I believe, or it's at least week 5, I think. It's been these weeks just all run together for me. I feel like it's been one long year since the pandemic started last March, but each and every week has been incredibly special. And so far, we've interviewed everyone who's been from like the Proviso Township area, with the exception of one person. I think everybody's been born and raised or spent significant time around there. So some of the audience watching is going to be local, but some of the audience watching is going to be from all over. But I think it'll be relative and relevant wherever they are and wherever they're from. So for those watching, it says this. It says Jennifer Cassell was invested as an administrative judge in the Chicago office of the U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board in October of 2020. Prior to joining the MSPB, Jennifer worked as an assistant regional counsel with the United States Department of Health and Human Services in a Chicago regional office for 11 years. As HHS, excuse me, she litigated cases in federal court and before federal administrative tribunals. Prior to that, she clerked for Judge Ann Williams on the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit. She received her JD, everybody. That does not stand for Jermaine Dupree. She had received her JD from DePaul University College of Law. Jennifer has previously taught advanced legal writing at DePaul and served as an elected board member and secretary for District 200 Board of Education for 4 years. She is a wife. She is a mother of daughters who inspire her every day to do her best. With no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have Jennifer Cassell Wright here with you tonight. So I want to say thank you again so much, Jennifer. I'm going to jump right in if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, we read the bio, but tell us a little bit about you from your perspective.
Sure. Well, first, I just have to thank you, Pastor Teddy. I'm really honored that you invited me to do this. I've been watching the series back, and it's been very inspiring, and I'm honored that you would even think to ask me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm following the trend of some of your previous guests coming from the Proviso Township area. I grew up in Broadview.
Wow.
Yeah, in a little 1-bedroom apartment. My mom and my sister and I, we could see 290 from coming out of our front door. We were right off the expressway. Went to Proviso East High School. I'd say probably around high school or so, I really discovered that I had a love for writing. So I wanted to be a journalist. So that was kind of my first career. I went to University of Iowa for school to study journalism, which was, at the time, one of the top schools, especially for journalism. But coming from Proviso, coming from a diverse community, predominantly Black community, it was, I'd say, a culture shock, to say the least, to end up at an institution like University of Iowa. And I don't think we talk about that enough. Academically, I think I was fine. I think socially, it was a lot more difficult to try to transition, to in a PWI, like the University of Iowa. And so I ended up coming back home, and I transferred to University of Illinois in Chicago, which is known as kind of a commuter school. But for me, it felt, very natural. It felt good to be home in a much more comfortable, welcoming environment. It was there at UIC that I had my first daughter, Alexis, who I hope is watching while she's studying. She's a senior at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. She's graduating in a couple of months. Yes. And, coming from being a working single mother and going to college, talk about barriers and obstacles. It's definitely a lot of challenges there, but we made it. And now she's graduating, with straight A's at U of I herself. So
That's
that
awesome. That's
yes.
so good. I'm trying to mute myself because I'll interrupt people in the middle of their storytelling, but that's so awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of my coming up through my education through college, and then I did what I said I was going to do, and I worked as a newspaper journalist for about 4 years. And I say, often that it's kind of still my first love. I love to write. I loved interviewing people, like you're doing. But, again, to be transparent about the challenges and the barriers, journalism is not a lucrative career. When you have student loans, when you have a child to take care of. So I started to think about what my other options were. And I thought, why not law school? I didn't know really any lawyers around me at the time. I didn't have lawyers in my family. My mom didn't go to college, and my sister has gone back to college later in life. So I didn't have a lot of experience, I would say, trying to get into the legal field. But applied to DePaul thinking that it was kind of a long shot for me to even go to school, and went there. It was hard. It was really hard for those 3 years. And then went on to, as you said, I worked at HHS for a little over 11 years. And then now recently I joined the U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board, which I know is a mouthful, but yeah, I love what I'm doing right now. At least, I'm still fresh in the role, but it's been good to be able to have kind of a larger impact on people's lives.
No, that's so one. I think congratulations are in order just for the way in which you have matriculated and continue to pursue and advance. And because of the pandemic, I haven't seen you in person. I mean, we might have started on like a drive-through maybe, but I haven't seen you in person since before March of 2020 now. So congratulations on the new role. I was elated when I heard the news, and I want to say major congratulations to you for that. But so you mentioned a couple of things I want to pull out, and I kind of go from there. One of them is you mentioned that your mom didn't go to college, and that your sister is going back now, I believe, or something to that nature. What kind of intrigued you to continue to pursue education post high school, or what was kind of some of your inspirations in those regards, if you don't mind sharing that?
Sure. So I think I was always a good student. I always loved to read from a young age, and school was kind of where I built up my self-esteem. Teachers would say, you're really smart. You're, a good writer. And, really supported me and entered me in writing contests and things like that along the way. So I think I always had a love for education and always felt like that was a way for me to thrive, and also to hopefully, pursue a better life. I didn't know exactly, where I would end up, but my thought was I probably had a better shot at improving my circumstances if I, continued on with my education. So I think the teachers made the biggest difference, though. I have to shout that out to all the teachers in my life.
No, I think that's awesome in and of itself, right? I think one to hear, I hope someone watching this heard you when you said that for you, once you realized that education was something, not just education, but studies was something you did well, how you used that to your advantage to really kind of even encourage your esteem and your confidence. I think something I've discovered in my time and tenure with people in general from different walks in life, that sometimes it's harder to develop the esteem and that confidence that's needed. But I think sometimes it's because we don't dig into enough of what we're naturally inclined to. So for some, that may not be studies, it may be music or maybe something else, but because they don't dig into it enough, the esteem isn't necessarily built up to even believe I'm good at something. So I think I want to point that out, because I think that's key in some regards. Something else you mentioned though, one, again, kudos to you for just pursuing on. I think, but can you say what JD stands for those? I don't want to assume that anybody watching this knows.
Right, Juris Doctor. Yeah. There's
The highest you can go. The highest. Let's not undersell it. So the highest you could go in those regards. The highest you can go. There's a lot of schooling. How many years were you in school, if you don't mind me asking?
Right. So I did 4 years of college, and then I had to tack on an extra year because I had a baby, and then 3 years of law school, and then passing the bar.
Yeah, so that's so I want to, again, for those who are watching, sometimes we hear these things and we don't know what it takes. And again, to explain on the years, I'm sure doesn't even come close to really kind of going into the depth required, which is something I am going to dig into. You mentioned attending a PWI, so a predominantly white institute. Can you speak to what that experience was like from you coming from, Proviso Township, coming from Broadview, and then I'm sure, being in the minority group, I would imagine in Iowa. Could you speak to that a bit?
It was very much a minority group. I think one way that was really a struggle for me is that I didn't really get involved in like the Black Greek community. It felt like that community was very tight knit and very strong. And had I, found a way to maybe join that community, maybe I would have had a little bit of an easier time, because it was definitely an isolating experience. There just weren't a lot of Black students there, or students of color at all. At the time I was at Proviso East, it was obviously still a predominantly Black school, but we had, students of every race, Hispanic, Asian. And so I thought that that's the way that the world was, as naive as that sounds. My friends were Asian, they were Hispanic, they were Black, they were white, and we all, got along, listened to the same music, we hung out together. And then I went to Iowa, and I was just an other. I was, things as blatant as, can I touch your skin? So it was jarring, to say the least.
Absolutely. So I thank you for sharing that. I think that one for those watching, I think it's possible to not realize how much that's still in 2021 a reality for many people at many places. I remember my first experience going into a room where I wasn't even an other. I remember going into my first room where I was the first person they had met that was my color, right? It was like, oh, can I ask you questions? And at that point in time, so for me, it wasn't a culture shock. For me, I went to Walther in Merrill's Park. So, I was around a diverse group from that period in time and had been exposed to kind of some different demographics. But I remember actually it was a room I was in for President Barack Obama's inauguration. So it was inauguration one, and I was there for a leadership conference with some other students. And I was the first African American they had ever met. They had heard about us, saw us, and they were just so intrigued. It was like, and all jokes aside, and they weren't being offensive when they made it. It was like, you iron? I was ironing my shirt for the night. It's like, oh, and it wasn't like, oh, you people iron. We don't. I mean, I don't think you people do that. It was like, oh, you iron. I don't even iron. Right. So, but it was just interesting to kind of be in that environment. And I'm sure in your case, taking your path, what that could have been like. And so thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned some things in terms of, you went to University of Iowa, if I recall correctly, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just give you a school in Iowa. Like, hey, that's not what I said. So you went to University of Iowa,
Yes.
and you were interested in a path, at least we're considering a path of like communications. And then financially, you took into some things into consideration. Kind of talk me through a bit of how you transitioned from that to even saying, oh, I mean, again, I'm never going to minimize a legal path, a law path. And again, you went as far as to become, counsel and those type of things. So talk to me about just kind of a little bit about your decision-making process.
Sure. Again, I still love writing. And I think that's what drew me to journalism, being able to talk to people and interview them and kind of get their story and then find a way to lay it out in a way that other people would find interesting and could learn something from. And I did. I loved it. But I think my first job, my starting salary as a journalist, I think was like $20,000. And when you have student loans that you have to pay, and you have a daughter that you have to take care of, you just can't make, the ends meet. And, I knew a couple people who had, gone to law school, thought about going to law school, and I never really saw that for me, kind of growing up. because I love journalism so early on. But I remember I was actually training for the Chicago Marathon, and I was running with a group of women, and one of the women that I was training with was going to law school. And she was telling me about the experience, and I am not a runner. I don't consider myself to be an athlete by any stretch of the imagination. So the fact that I was training for a marathon at all was like huge, but it really kind of helped move my mindset, because I said, if I hated running, never was an athlete, and I'm running 26 miles, why can't I go to law school?
Wow.
If she's going and she's doing it, and we're running together and we're accomplishing this goal that we've been training for 6 months, why can't I? So yeah, she actually, I think, was one of the first people that really started me thinking, you know what, maybe I can do this. And I didn't really know what it was like. I remember going to the library and checking out books to prepare for the law school admissions test. And again, I didn't have people to walk me through that process. It was kind of learning as you go. So I always try to encourage, if there's other students out there, if you can talk to people who have done it before you, use that resource. You don't have to figure it out on your own.
No, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that. I think, again, I want to pull something out. I feel like you noted that's noteworthy was you used the discipline and the effort that you saw yourself put into something else and said, well, if I could do that, I could do this. And I think that sometimes what kind of prevents some people from also being able to move forward is like, well, I've never done this before. Well, you may have never done that specific thing before, but when you work at something and you build the endurance and you build the discipline and you build the tools, those tools, or as I often refer when I'm teaching, I refer to like principles. So if I live a principle-centered life, or I operate my life based upon kind of some principles of some values or some foundations, then I could take those same principles and apply them other places, which is what it sounds like you're saying to here. And if I'm not mistaken, you still, well, pre-COVID, have been doing marathons, if I recall correctly. Like, I don't think that was your last one you ever did.
Yeah. That was a lot of full marathon. I've done half marathons, but no more full. It's too much.
Okay. So talk to us a little bit about what you've done as far as post graduating and going into law, and then tell us a little bit about what that means and looks like. Again, I've read it, and if I could be honest, I like to think of myself as a little bit astute and informed. I'm like, oh. So tell us a little bit about it.
No, I know. So when I was in law school, I knew that I wanted to pursue public interest of some sort. I really was not interested in going to a law firm or going to work for a corporation, which, if you think about the fact that I was going to law school to see if I could try to earn a better living, I still chose the path in the law that is more public interest oriented, which usually is not as lucrative as the law firm or corporation. But my goal was never to get rich. My goal was to, be able to help people, advocate for people, and be able to support my family. I think you should, be able to pursue both a passion and also, take care of yourself and the people that depend on you. So that was kind of my goal going into law school. I was going to do something in public interest. I didn't know exactly what, if that meant I was going to work for a legal aid clinic or nonprofit. But I had the fortune and the luck, and I, can't even express how much it changed my life, to clerk for Judge Ann Williams. I stand on her shoulders. Everything that I have been able to accomplish is because she led the way. She is an amazing inspiration. She was the third Black woman to serve on any federal circuit court, which is the level of the Court of Appeals, below the Supreme Court. And she does the work. She pulls people along with her. She always talks about reaching back, and that's exactly what she does. And so clerking for her for a year, kind of, helping her get ready for court, helping her draft her opinions, really, really made me a better lawyer, made me a better person, and really inspired me to be in the role that I'm in right now. what I do pales in comparison to the work that Judge Williams has done. But if I can hopefully treat the people that are in front of me with dignity, with consideration, with fairness, the way that she did, and then the other piece is hopefully be able to have an impact on other young lawyers and law students, then I think I've hopefully passed, her legacy, the legacy that she's given. Hopefully she's, passed the torch to me for me to pass to someone else.
No, I think that's incredible. And Regina just typed in the comments, say, yes, mentorship. I think sometimes we negate and neglect the impact that it can have. Now, some of us aren't as fortunate all the time to run into them, maybe when we would think we should, or whatever that case is. There's many different thoughts and schools of thought around it. However, the truth or the statement that I've always received from those who I feel like contributed significantly to my life in some way, shape, or form, they've always told me the greatest contribution I could give to them was to pay it forward, right? To focus on what it means to take that same idea, to take that same notion and say, how is it we raise the bar and pull somebody else up that's behind us or in front of us or around us, to show them the way, to not just, talk about it, but to literally show them the way. So you're a lawyer, you've done counsel, but now you're an administrative judge. So, I mean, you're not just, counselor, right. You're a judge. Let's talk about that.
Yes, so it's a new role. I've been doing this now for, I guess, 5 months or so. And I love it. It's strange to be doing it in a pandemic because right now we're doing everything virtual. So, the hearings are similar to this, on Zoom, and we're meeting with parties over the phone rather than in person. But for me, I feel like it's impactful work. It's a mouthful to say U.S. Merit Systems Protection Board, but really what the work is we are protecting the merit systems principle of the federal government. So the federal government is committed to having a diverse workforce and to be free of discrimination. And we are ensuring that that's the case by hearing appeals from federal employees who, maybe have had some sort of disciplinary action taken against them, like they've been fired from their job or they've been suspended, and they're possibly claiming discrimination or that they were a whistleblower, and that's why the agency took that action against them. And so for me, I think it's impactful work, and I'm honored to be able to do it. I'm honored to be able to bring a diverse perspective to the work, because there are not a lot of lawyers of color. There are not a lot of judges of color. And so the more that we can be in those places and bring our diverse experiences, I think the better off all of the systems will be.
Absolutely. Thank you for what you do there. Here's what I want to ask you, or I want you to speak to what you kind of mentioned there. So there's not a lot of diversity and representation, I'm sure, in that field, let alone, if we could just be honest. So I'm sure there's not a lot of diversity, and I would imagine that it's still not as high population-wise of women in those fields as well. So speak to us a bit about just kind of some of the obstacles you've overcame, or some of the barriers that you've had to, whether intentionally or unintentionally, break down in order for you to step into the role you're in now.
I mean, you're right. There are not nearly enough women. There are certainly not nearly enough folks of color. I think the statistics now are there's maybe 5% African-American lawyers, wow. 5% Hispanic, and even less than that for Asian lawyers. So we have a long way to go. And that's some of the work that Judge Williams has started at nationally, and also very close to home here in Chicago. So if I can give a shout out to Just the Beginning. It's a pipeline organization co-founded by Judge Williams to bring women, underrepresented communities into the legal field. Awesome. So I say that because there are lots of programming available with JTB for middle school students, high school students, law students, undergrad students. So if anyone is watching and might be interested in learning more about the legal field, please consider looking at the JTB website. I know they have an application process that's open right now for middle school and high school students that gives them the experience of getting to know judges of color, getting to know tour courthouses virtually now because of COVID.
Okay.
But so we have to have those kind of programs because numbers of having only 5% African American lawyers, that's not good enough, and that number has not increased as quickly as it should. And with everything going on in the world, I think that's all the more reason that we need folks of color in these positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So I want to kind of not necessarily pivot a bit, but so you are an administrative judge. You mentioned that you have the older daughter who is currently in college. So you're also a family woman. You're a wife. You have a younger daughter as well. So how is that experience in terms of managing your professional career as well as your family responsibility? And we're going to be honest, your husband's hilarious and a handful. And so, what's that like? I'm sure there are plenty of people watching, men and women, who wonder about what it means to manage a successful professional career while also being a committed partner and parent and all that kind of stuff. So what's that been like for you?
Sure. I mean, there's definitely been challenges. I think I've been fortunate in that I chose a path of working for the federal government, of working in public interest, where I'm not burning the midnight oil. I think, lawyers that work for a big law firm or a corporation, they certainly are, getting the money, but they're also working a lot more hours than I have over my career. I've made it a purpose to get my work done, in my 8 hours or 8.5 hours, and get home so that I can be home to have dinner on the table and be able to attend, school events. So for me, choosing this path, I had to find jobs that were conducive to that. When I first graduated, it was, Alexis and I, she was still young. She was in grade school still. And so she needed me to be home with her. And so that's kind of part of the reason why I chose the path, mostly because I love the work and I want to do good, but also because it allows for that work-life balance. And I think also, I love this quote by Michelle Obama, and I don't want to butcher it, but she talks about you can't have it all. Like, that's a lie when you say you can have it all. You can, but not at the same time. Right. And that really resonated with me, because there are the times you're going to have to drop some things. You're going to have to let some things go in order to make it work. Otherwise, the balance, sometimes it can't work. So one of the things that I did, I was on the school board for 4 years. A lot of people asked me to run another 4 years, and Addie was, I was pregnant with her while I was on the campaign trail, and she was with me, in the boardroom when she was a baby. So I had to say, no, my family comes first. And this has been, a hardship on my family. So don't be afraid to say no, and, try to carve out a path that allows you to have, both worlds the best that you can. But sometimes you have to realize, you have to let the ball drop on some things in order to focus where it needs to be at that moment.
No, that's so key and critical. I mean, so there's a couple of things I'm going to come back to. I want to definitely come back to some of your passions in terms of the work, but I want to kind of hammer on a couple of things you said here I think are key and critical. So absolutely, I totally agree with that sentiment around you can't have it all and what it means, right? It doesn't mean that you can't pursue. It doesn't mean you can't experience great things, but there is a truth to say you cannot have everything simultaneously. I read a similar sentiment in another book, and it's something I kind of talk to some people about when we're doing like this, some life coaching or some professional coaching. Is I've kind of moved away from even discussing like work-life balance and really kind of talk about this work-life tension that exists, right? Because it's not really a balancing act. It's more like managing tension, if we're going to be honest in terms of the weight of the responsibility. I remember probably about a decade ago now. I was part of a mentorship for ministers and leaders under 40 that Bishop Jakes was doing. And he talked about how life, if you're going to thrive, is like learning how to be a professional juggler. That ultimately you can't hold everything at the same time. So you have to figure out what you're going to throw in the air to work with something else, but you can't leave it up there too long. So you've got to figure out a way to come back and pick up the next thing and then throw the next thing up in the air. And you can't allow the things that are most key and critical to be lingering in the air too long. So you got to figure out what it means to kind of work through that tension. So I want to say thank you for sharing it. And again, I think the world of your family, something I want to kind of hit on with that is you both have achieved academically. You both continue to go for things professionally. Can you talk about what that is, not just what that's like in your household, but what that means for your household? I'm sure you can't speak necessarily verbatim for your husband, but if you would just kind of, I mean, again, you're setting an example for your daughters and for your children and for others. I mean, I'm watching, others are watching. Can you just talk a little about that?
Right. I think we both have had a commitment, not just to education, but to hopefully being able to be role models. As you know, Reggie coaches, so he's mentored a lot of, high school students, even, in college as well, college age students. And I've done my fair share of, mentoring. My goddaughter's actually sitting here listening with me right now. Hopefully we've been an example, to the young people in our lives. But it's a challenge, it's getting back to, the balancing, sometimes when, I have to pick up the slack where he cannot. And so you have to find that balance where you can, but it's not easy. But I think in the long run, it's been beneficial, not just for the family, but for the extended family and other people around us, to see, both what we've been able to accomplish and our, commitment to education.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's key and critical, right? I've admired it from afar. I've gotten to see it from afar, but I think it's noteworthy to even know and to see that. I mean, it was just a few years ago, if I recall, where Reggie even decided he was going to go back and kind of continue to advance and pursue some things and continue to pursue there. So I think that's incredible to know. That doesn't mean it has to be everybody's path, but I think we can only rise to the level of our exposure. So to even know or to talk about the fact that it's possible, challenging. Nobody's naive to the challenges. Nobody should be naive to the problems, but possible. If that's what you want to do, that it's possible to figure out what it means to say no to some things. There's some people even watching this. I've walked them through no being a full sentence. We it's no is a life principle. You have to learn how to say no and learn to stick to your no's, but your no's can lead to a life of fulfillment. Sometimes it's not just what you say yes to, it's what you say no to. And so I want to say thank you for sharing that. And again, it means a lot to be able to see it. And again, I've never had the chance or never even felt like it was the right moment prior to be like, I'm noticing that you all are doing this, and I think that is great. But I'm watching, I'm witnessing, and I think it's a great example to set and share. So you mentioned something though, and I do want to kind of go back to somebody else mentioned in the comments, and that was around this notion of the importance of why the representation is needed, specifically in the legal field, considering the climate and culture of what we have seen be exposed and probably perpetuated. I don't necessarily know if I believe it's more rampant. I do believe it's being exposed at another level. I think this has been happening for years. Unfortunately, it's been happening for years. Social media and the pandemic both presented an unfortunate opportunity, but an opportunity nonetheless for these much needed conversations to rise to the forefront. From your end of it, as someone who is in the legal field, again, for those, so that the watchers understand, can you speak to why it's so important and key and critical that we begin to have more representation in the legal field?
Right. I mean, it's throughout systems, the legal system, both, especially in the criminal system. I'm, on the civil side, which means I'm not sending anyone to jail. Thankfully, that I would not want to be a criminal judge. but we need folks, the lawyers need to be there advocating. We hear way too many stories of, I did a lot of clemency and expungement work when I was in law school. And I heard story after story of Black and brown people who were arrested for something or that they didn't do, or that was very minor. And the public defender just said, well, just take a plea deal. Just take a plea deal, because their caseload is high. They can't really investigate. And so there were folks that were, stuck in jail and in prison for things that they didn't do. It's a travesty, but it's part of the system. And unless we change the system, things won't change. And the only way to change the system is to change it from within. So it has to come from, from the lawyers, but we need judges in those positions as well. We need to see people that look like us, reflected back at us. And I think there's way too many stereotypes that if you're not a Black person, if you're not a brown person, if you haven't experienced it, maybe you will think, oh, well, yeah, just take the plea deal because, he probably did something. I've heard that before. He probably did something. And so we need people that are in the right roles that can say, no, this is a human being. We need to hear their story. We need to see them. We need to hear them. And I think, everybody should be able to do that. But I think having folks of color in those roles, I think will go a long way to accomplish that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was sharing with our guest we had last week, as I said, commenting, I was Regina Townsend. And so, she spoke from, Regina, while you're watching, shameless plug, I've got to get you back on. We didn't talk at all about your librarian experience in that educational path. We spent so much time around your other passions. But one of the things that we kind of talked about with that, and really it's kind of been probably a theme or a thematic thrust these last 5 weeks or so that honestly wasn't intentional with the thought process of these barrier breaking Mondays, but it is this notion of the importance of representation in every sector and in every field. This notion that, honestly, for lack of a better word, yes, we can. Something I say every episode when I'm talking about certain subject matters is Black and brown people specifically, but not exclusively. But the reality of it is we're underrepresented, and by default, because we're underrepresented, we're often misrepresented in so many sectors, in so many fields. And that's why having you on tonight meant so much to me. Is we're underrepresented in law. And by default, we're misrepresented. And this month for me, it's tough to throw out an anchor and be like, this month's probably going to be our best month. But I think it's going to be tough to follow just this notion of representation from Black and brown, but then representation from Black and brown women. Like there's for years and for decades and for generations, there's been this proverbial ceiling that's existed. And then there came this notion about 5 years ago where people started to pretend like, oh, there's not a ceiling. It's like, so it went from this conversation around, breaking the glass ceiling to saying there was never a glass ceiling to be broke. And it's like, no, there was, and there is. There was and there is, and we still need to do our part at continuing to encourage our young women, and even as a youth pastor and a young adult pastor, I spent a lot of time talking about young women and young men and those type of things. And when I stepped in like this lead pastor role, and I stepped into kind of some of these other just the people business. I tell people all the time, I feel I'm in the people business. It's just whatever I'm in and whatever I do, I'm in the people business. I deal with people. And because I deal with people, I see a lot and deal with a lot. And every older, seasoned, and mature woman is honestly a young woman at heart. Likewise for the men. And there's this notion that kind of exists once you hit a certain age that you can't do certain things or shouldn't do certain things. And I've got my thoughts around some of it. Some of it you probably shouldn't try at a certain age, right? Whatever you are, some stuff you probably should leave behind. However, my hope is that these Monday nights provide people a glimpse of hope, chance, opportunity, possibility to say, yes, you may be Black and brown, or you may be another color. Again, this is specifically, but not exclusively. But I am concerned. I'm committed to presenting people with representation in every field if I can, to say this is someone who overcame the obstacles. They came from the communities you came from or similar ones, that they've risen through the ranks. They have had their own challenges. They've had their own problems. You know, sometimes we're in a social media age, so people only see highlights. They only see pictures. They don't understand. No, I dealt with the challenges. I was raised in a 1-bedroom apartment, right? People need to hear those stories to understand. I was a single mom. I was a single mom early, but it didn't stop. It didn't dictate or determine where you are now. You know, 5 months ago, you applied for another role. It wasn't like, oh, well, I'm in law. I'm a counselor now. I'm these type of things now. It was like, no, I'm gonna go be a judge, and I'm sure this still isn't it. And I think that's great, and I think people need to hear that. We've been going for about 45 minutes now. If you're in the chat, I'd love to give you a chance to ask any questions if you have any questions that you want to raise or things that stood out to you. In the meantime, while they do that, I want to kind of leave you with just a couple things here. Are there any values or standards that you feel like have kind of held you up or held you together, or that you kind of go back to as bedrock foundation?
Kind of the one that I always go back to for me is I always try to do my best. And that might look different in a different moment. You know, when you're sick, your best might not look, or in a pandemic, your best might not look the same as it would if you're at the top of your game. But I do, that's kind of my own personal mantra that I have to go back to, because I don't ever want to leave a situation feeling like I didn't give it my all, whatever it is at that particular moment. But giving myself grace too, to realize that, you know, sometimes your best is not what it would be in an ideal situation. You know, just always acting with integrity. I think lawyers sometimes get a bad rap, for, you know, being, playing fast and loose, I guess, with the truth.
Right.
And I don't think that that's necessarily accurate, especially not for, I would hope not for lawyers who are in the public sector and working towards the public good. At least that's not been my experience with the folks that I've worked with over the years. But I do think it's important to always act with integrity in every circumstance, so that, you know, because people are watching what you do. And so that is one that I always go back to. And then leading by example, we talked about kind of mentoring and the work that I do, you know, both through my job and then also just, you know, in my personal life. And my goal is to lead by example. People don't remember what you say, they remember what you do. And so leading by example, I think people learn a lot more that way than they do you lecturing them.
Absolutely. That's so awesome. So for those who are watching, maybe you didn't catch it, but I'm presuming that really was one of Jennifer's, you know, buried, like her thought. Each week I try to leave you all with a thought. And I think that's key. Living with integrity is key. For those who, let me give you a simple way of thinking of living with integrity. Your private life and your public life looking the same. You know, being honest, being truthful, being accountable. Like sometimes we kind of have this variation of what we feel like integrity is. It's like, no, integrity is that you can't redefine integrity. It's who you are when the lights are on, and it's who you are when the lights are off. And I feel like the challenge some people have with it is sometimes they feel like they can be integral when the lights are on and not when it's off. And it's like, no, it comes out of that. But you also being your best and bringing your best. Now that varies. And sometimes we have to give ourselves grace to say, look, I can only give my best, but my best today is 75%. But I'm going to give the best 75% I have to give you. Right. And some of the roles I have, there's some days where I feel better than others. I have more than others. My commitment, though, is I can't give you 100% of what I don't have, but I can give you all of what I do have.
Yes.
right? And I think that that's huge. So I want to say thank you for sharing. If you're watching today, you may not be able to give 100% because of whatever. Again, this pandemic has challenged us so much, but it doesn't mean you should settle or give less than your best to something you're committed to doing. When you show up, you need to show up ready and willing to give the best of you at any point in time. And if we're going to be honest, most of you watching, you need to know this. I say it all the time. I see Paris is watching right now. I tell Paris all the time. You never know who's watching you. You never know who's being inspired by your journey, and you never know who your moment of vulnerability or your moment where you don't bring your best also impacts. Because you can take somebody forward and you can set somebody back. So you have to always bring your best. So I want to say, thank you again, Jennifer, for sharing. We were joking backstage about how I was preparing myself for a no, just because I know you're a worker, and some workers don't like coming out to the forefront. But I believe that tonight inspired some, it encouraged some. I was honestly inspired by some of what I was hearing, and honestly by all of what I heard, and I was encouraged by it. I'm incredibly encouraged by your courage and by your journey and by your commitment. I think that it's needed. I think that it's necessary. And if there's anything else that you would like to add or any shout outs that you would like to give, I want to make sure to give you the space and grace to do so. But I also don't want to keep you. We talked about family and life balance. And I want to make sure to give you back your Monday night to go do that.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time. You have inspired me so much, Pastor Teddy. I think Reggie told you, listening to you, being a part of Empowerment Church, hearing you talk about living your purpose was really, honestly, one of the things that led me to even applying for this job.
Wow.
Yeah, then that's coming from the heart. I loved my job, what I was doing, but I felt like, and I heard you kept telling me, you came down my road, that not just to settle, not just to push for better, do better, be better. And so I didn't know that I was ready yet, which is something else I'm now prone to tell people: start even when you don't know you're ready, because you really, really pushed me to do that. So I want to say thank you. I appreciate you inviting me. And again, I hope if anyone that is watching that knows a middle school student or a high school student, even if they don't know for sure that they want to go to law school, but they want to learn more about it, please consider going to jtb.org and looking at that application for the virtual programming that they have. The applications are due May 17th.
I see some of our hosts are watching this. If you all could do me a favor, go ahead and type that website link in the chat for me, if you don't mind. jtb.org. Was that what it was?
Yes, just the beginning. Yes, and it's a virtual program now for 2021. They have programs, though, in person all over Chicago and other states, but right now it's all virtual because of COVID.
Here goes Reggie in the chat now.
Yes, and because of the Kids Church, we actually have been able to listen to you. Because Patty's been able to be with Javi and all the other great people in Children's Church. Chelsea, I see you there too.
I want to say thank you for that. Honestly, when Reggie sent me that toward the end of last year, it was, honestly, if I could just be honest, it was such an encouragement to me, and it honestly came at a time in which I was wondering, if I could just be honest, we all go through these moments, and sometimes people see people with a stage or whatever with levels of influence, they feel like they're always strong. I wasn't at my strongest point, probably just mentally, because of the pandemic, because of some of the challenges we were all facing, and hearing about so much death and seeing about so many problems people were having. And again, my role is to be an influencer and an encourager, and to continue to give people hope. But I was really wondering about some of the degrees of the effectiveness. I'm used to being around people, so I can gauge. I'm relational, right? So I could gauge better how people were doing and what people were doing, and even how impactful some of the things I may be doing or working with them on were going. And so I was working through that idea, and I've been pushing that whole notion all year last year. some people are like, it's not my year of better. And it's like, no, it's possible. You gotta stay ready. You have to know what readiness really means. It means starting with what you have, starting where you are, using what you have and doing what you can. You gotta be ready. And so when he sent me that message, I honestly broke down into tears. I can't even lie. I'd be lying if I said anything. I broke down into tears to know that again, that whatever sense of influence, whatever sense of responsibility I've been given through my different seats and my different roles, to know that it's making a difference both near and far, means the world to me. That's my hope, is even with these nights, is that somebody watches and hears something that's said from myself. And again, the goal of these nights, firsthand, I could take 45 minutes and just pour and teach or whatever, but I want people to hear the impact that others are making. I want people to hear the impact for some people who've been a part of this, to hear the impact that their faith may even play in their life and their careers. I think sometimes there's a separation that people make between spirituality and professional pursuits, but I believe they go hand in hand. My faith should fuel whatever I'm doing, whether it's family or professional pursuits or believing in who I am, understanding that I'm capable. And so I want to say thank you for sharing. I'm not at all going to keep you and hold you. I'm going to end this at the time I told you that I would. But I want to say thank you so very much. You all, those who are watching, you're going to watch this replay. I want to say thank you for watching the replay. Those who are watching live and watching the replay, I want to invite you to share this, do not keep this to yourself. You never know who may watch this video back and will be impacted, inspired, influenced to believe that some things are possible. The next judge, the next lawyer, the next public servant, the next public advocate, community advocate may be watching this. Middle school, junior high school student may be watching this, and they may go into that JTB program. And man, I'm telling you, if all don't work out for me on some of these other things, I may jump in this JTB program and see what that be like, and then go serve the people that way. I can't say I'm gonna spend the second half of my life. If I did that, I don't know. I spent the first half of my life in public service. If I did that, I think the second half of my life may be trying to figure out what it means to fly on corporate jets. But I think the will of the Lord may be different for me in those regards. Now, I'll take heed of that. But I want to say thank you. It means the world. And again, your husband at least was watching. Reggie, I want to say thank you for sharing the gift of your wife with us and for introducing us. It means so much when people don't have to introduce their family to you. And he introduced his family to me. And I want to say thank you to him for that. And thank you for sharing tonight. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you all go. You all have an incredible night. Jennifer, if you can stay on for just a second to take you backstage. But I want to say thank you to you all watching. Please go ahead and share this. And normally I don't mix my announcements together. But if you're watching this on Saturday, April the 3rd and Sunday, April the 4th, if you're in the Proviso Land area, the two organizations I lead, so Empowerment Church and Empowerment Foundation, we are hosting a Easter outreach weekend for the community. And so maybe by chance you're watching this and you have children or know of children, you have nieces, nephews, whatever the case may be, we're hosting an incredible outreach that weekend. It's going to be a drive-in movie, completely free for the kids. We've all been cooped up in the house because of this pandemic, so everything will be safe, social distance. But I want to make sure that you all are aware of it. I want to make sure you all are inviting people. I have the privilege of leading some great teams that are pulling this together, and I want to make sure you all are a part of it. You can get more information about that at Easter@empowerment.com, Easter@empowerment.com. And maybe even by chance you may be watching this and you want to partner financially as we continue to do the best we can to serve as many people as we can. All that information is available on Easter@empowerment.com. And so I want to say thank you all in advance for that as well. But I'll let you all go. Have an incredible night, and we'll talk with you all later. Thank you so much.